My 30th birthday was supposed to be special, you know? But Daniel, my boss, just canceled everything, saying he had a huge business trip. I felt a bit bummed, but what could I do? Only later, I started seeing weird charges on our project budget, like a fake one for his wife's vacation. Last week, he smiled, thinking it was over, then froze seeing the receipt I held. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Life, you know, it just hums along, day after day. You wake up, you make your coffee, you go to work. For me, that was my routine for years. I'm Alara, by the way. I worked at Sterling Innovations, a big tech company, nothing super fancy, but good people mostly. Or so I thought. My job was project lead for the new Evergreen software, a pretty important one, honestly. It had been my baby for over a year, and I poured everything into it. The launch was only a few months away, and everyone was buzzing, even Daniel. Daniel was my direct boss, the department head. He was one of those guys, you know? Always smiling, always patting you on the back, but his eyes never quite met yours. He had this way of making you feel important, like you were his star player, but then he'd twist it around somehow. My 30th birthday was coming up, a big one for me, and I'd actually been looking forward to it. My friend, Chloe, who also worked at Sterling, had been bugging me for weeks. Alara, what are we doing for the big 3-0? She'd asked one Tuesday at lunch, poking her salad. Chloe, she's like sunshine, always bright, always pushing me to have more fun. I don't know, Chloe, I'd mumbled, pushing a pea around my plate. Maybe just dinner, quiet, you know? Quiet? Alara, it's your 30th. You deserve something grand. A weekend getaway, maybe? I already put in a request for that Friday off for us. She winked, and I laughed. Chloe always had my back. I'd actually talked to Daniel about it too, a few weeks before. We had a team meeting, and it came up. Oh, Alara's big birthday is next month. Chloe had announced, way too loudly, making everyone chuckle. Daniel had smiled, a big, broad, Daniel-style smile. Indeed it is, Alara, he'd said. We'll have to do something special for our star project lead, won't we? Don't you worry about a thing. I'll make sure the team takes you out for a proper celebration. We need to acknowledge your hard work on Evergreen, especially with the launch so close. He said it with such conviction, like he truly meant it. And I, being a naive fool, believed him. I really did. I went home that day feeling, for the first time in a while, genuinely excited. A proper celebration with my team, led by Daniel? That would be nice. I even told my mom, who lives a few states away, not to worry about flying in. The company's doing something, I'd told her, feeling important. Then, about 2 weeks before my birthday, things started to shift. Daniel became elusive. He was always busy, always in a meeting, always on a call. He stopped by my desk less, and his emails were short, to the point. I figured it was just the pre-launch crunch, you know? Evergreen was big. But still, the birthday celebration hadn't been mentioned again. I didn't want to bring it up, didn't want to seem needy. The week of my birthday arrived. Tuesday morning, I walked into the office, a little buzz of anticipation in my stomach. Maybe they were planning a surprise. I saw Chloe at her desk, already tapping away. Morning, birthday girl, she whispered, giving me a quick grin. Any news from the big boss? I shrugged, a little disappointed. Nah, nothing yet. Maybe later? A few hours later, Daniel called me into his office. He was sitting behind his huge desk, fingers steepled, looking all serious. My heart gave a little hopeful flutter. This was it. The surprise, maybe? Alara, he began, his voice low, I'm so sorry to do this, especially with your birthday coming up. My smile froze. Oh, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Yes, a critical client issue has come up. Out of state. I need to fly out tomorrow, first thing, and it's looking like I'll be gone the rest of the week, maybe even early next. It's absolutely vital, can't be pushed back. He sighed, a deep, performative sigh. It means, unfortunately, we'll have to postpone any birthday celebrations. I know. I feel terrible about it, truly. He sounded so sincere, so regretful. He even offered a small, sad smile. But listen, after I get back, we'll make it up to you, big time. Promise. My 30th birthday. Cancelled. For a critical business trip. Just like that. The air left my lungs. I felt a flush spread across my face, a mix of embarrassment and disappointment. I just nodded, trying to appear understanding. Of course, Daniel. Business comes first. I totally get it. My voice sounded thin, even to my own ears. When I walked out of his office, Chloe gave me a questioning look. I just shook my head, avoiding her gaze, and went back to my desk. I felt humiliated. Not just because the celebration was off, but because I'd actually believed him, bought into his whole star employee act. It stung. I spent the rest of the day just trying to focus on my tasks, but a sour knot had formed in my stomach. Later that afternoon, Chloe came over. "What happened?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I told her about Daniel's critical business trip. She listened, quiet for a moment. "That's really inconvenient timing, isn't it?" she said, but her voice held a strange note, like she was holding something back. "Tell me about it," I sighed. "I mean, it's fine, whatever. Just a birthday, right? It's not the end of the world." But it felt like a tiny end of my world, a little bit. That night, I just ordered takeout and watched a silly movie. My 30th birthday passed with a quiet phone call from my mom, who sounded sorry I was alone, and a text from Chloe. The next few days, work felt heavy. Daniel was gone, as he said. The office felt a little quieter without his booming laughter and constant presence. But then, things started to get weird. I was working on the evergreen budget, reconciling some numbers, when I noticed something odd. A new line item had appeared, approved by Daniel just before he left. It was for project outreach and client relations, a pretty vague description, even for us. And the amount? A whopping $220,000. $220,000. For a single line item, signed off in a hurry. My eyes widened. That was a lot. Way more than usual for that category. It definitely hadn't been in the last budget review. I blinked, then checked the date. It was approved the day before he left for his critical business trip. That's when a small, cold knot of suspicion started to form in my gut. A critical business trip, my canceled birthday, and then this massive, out-of-the-blue expense, approved right before he vanished. It just didn't sit right. Not at all. I tried to push it away, tell myself it was just a coincidence, a big project detail I wasn't privy to. But that feeling, that little whisper of doubt, it just wouldn't leave me alone. It was like a little scratch in my brain, a tiny itch I couldn't reach. It was the first crack in what I thought was a solid foundation. That $220,000 line item kept nagging at me. It was like a persistent fly buzzing around my head, even when I tried to focus on other things. I kept going back to the budget spreadsheet, checking and rechecking as if the numbers would change. They didn't. $220,000. For project outreach and client relations. It was too much, too sudden, and too vague. My intuition, which I usually trusted, was screaming at me. I tried to be logical, though. Maybe it was a genuine, last-minute deal. Something Daniel couldn't tell me about. But Daniel almost always looped me in on big project expenses, especially for Evergreen. It was my project. How could something this massive bypass me entirely? I decided I needed to subtly dig a little deeper. My first thought was Chloe. She was good at picking up on office gossip, and she had a knack for seeing through people. I waited until lunch the next day, and we went to our usual spot, a little cafe across the street. "Hey," I started, trying to sound casual. "Did you hear anything about Daniel's big critical client issue trip?" Chloe took a sip of her iced tea, her eyes narrowing playfully. "Oh, that? Yeah, critical client issue in, like, the Bahamas, maybe." My breath hitched. "What?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Okay, so I overheard Brenda, Daniel's wife, talking to someone on the phone in the lobby yesterday. She was giggling, all excited. She was saying how excited she was for their surprise anniversary trip to a super fancy resort in Turks and Caicos. And she mentioned Daniel had planned it all out, even got a private villa. She sounded like she was already there, practically. My stomach dropped, colder than Chloe's iced tea. Turks and Caicos? A private villa? That sounded a lot less like a critical client issue and a lot more like a vacation. A very expensive vacation. And a surprise anniversary trip meant it was planned, not a last-minute emergency. The pieces started to click, sharp and painful. My canceled birthday. His solemn face. The $220,000. Chloe, I whispered. He told me he had a critical business trip. He canceled my birthday celebration because of it. Chloe's face morphed from playful to genuinely concerned. No way, Alara. That's really messed up. So he just lied to you. It looks like it, I said, a wave of anger starting to simmer beneath the surface. And guess what else? Just before he left, he approved a new budget line item for $220,000 for project outreach and client relations. It's huge, Chloe. And it came out of the evergreen budget, which is my budget. Chloe's eyes went wide. 220,000? Alara, that's not project outreach. That's a house down payment. Or a super fancy car. We sat there in silence for a moment, the implications slowly dawning on us. It wasn't just a lie. It was a lie that somehow connected to a massive amount of money. And that money was coming from my project. I need to find out more, I said, my voice firmer now. The humiliation I felt about my birthday was now mixing with a rising sense of indignation and a cold determination. This wasn't just about my birthday anymore. This was about Daniel using my project, my hard work, for what looked like personal gain. When we got back to the office, I started to put together a mental timeline. Daniel's trip to Turks and Caicos. The $220,000 expense. My canceled birthday. It all fit too neatly. But I needed proof. Hard proof. And I needed to be careful. Daniel was a slick operator. If I confronted him without rock-solid evidence, he could easily turn it around on me. My career, everything I'd worked for, could be on the line. I decided to try accessing Daniel's expense reports. It was a long shot, but sometimes, with a project lead override, I could see higher-level approvals for evergreen-related expenses. It took me a few hours, navigating through convoluted company portals, but I finally found a subcategory under Project Outreach for client entertainment and travel. And there it was. Not $220,000 directly, but a series of charges over the last few weeks, all adding up. A private jet charter. A luxury resort booking under the name Brenda Daniels. High-end restaurant bills. Spa treatments. Scuba diving lessons. All dated to the exact week Daniel said he was on his critical business trip. My hands started to shake. The total, when I added it up, came to exactly $200,000. The remaining $20,000 from the original line item was for other, miscellaneous, expenses, probably padding to make it less obvious, or maybe a slush fund. My eyes scanned the details, each line a punch to my gut. This wasn't just a fake business trip. He had fabricated an entire trip, using company funds, and tied it to my project. He had used my project's budget to fund his wife's luxury vacation. And not just any vacation, a surprise anniversary trip, supposedly. The audacity. I printed out the detailed expense report, my heart thumping against my ribs. I knew this was dangerous. Accessing his reports, printing them out, it was a huge risk. But I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I stuffed the papers into my bag, feeling a mix of fear and righteous fury. I walked out of the office that evening in a daze. My head was spinning. It was one thing to cancel my birthday, to lie to my face. It was another thing entirely to commit fraud, to steal from the company, and to frame it under my project. It felt like he was subtly trying to implicate me, or at least use my project as a shield. I called Chloe as soon as I got home. "You won't believe what I found," I said, my voice tight with emotion. I told her everything, the detailed expenses, the private jet, the resort in Turks and Caicos, all under Daniel's approval and coded to Evergreen. Chloe was silent for a long moment. "Alara," she finally said, her voice soft, "this is huge. This isn't just a lie, this is fraud. Big-time fraud. You have to be careful." "I know," I replied, staring at the printouts spread across my dining table. "But what do I do? If I go to HR, he'll deny everything. He'll say I'm making it up, that I'm trying to sabotage him because he canceled my birthday. The thought made my blood run cold. He was good at twisting narratives. He was the department head. I was just a project lead. Who would they believe? That night, I barely slept. The humiliation I'd felt about my birthday was now overshadowed by a much heavier, much darker emotion, a deep sense of betrayal and a fear for my own professional future. Daniel hadn't just slighted me. He had actively used my work as a cover for his elaborate deceit. I was a pawn in his game, and the thought made my teeth clench. I kept looking at the receipt, the cold, hard numbers staring back at me. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about clearing my name, about exposing a thief, and about protecting the project I'd poured my heart into. It felt like a trap, and I was caught right in the middle. I had to find a way out, and I had to make sure Daniel paid for what he did. The next few days were a blur of nervous energy. I went to work, pretending everything was normal, but inside, I was churning. Daniel was back in the office, beaming as if nothing had happened. He even came to my desk, his usual charming self. "Alara. Great to be back," he said, too loudly. That client situation was handled beautifully, thank goodness. "Now, about that birthday celebration, we absolutely must make it up to you, big time." He winked. I just gave him a tight, polite smile. "Of course, Daniel," I said, my voice betraying none of the fury bubbling beneath. He had no idea what I knew. No idea I held the proof of his deception, right there, in my bag, in my apartment, locked away. It was a bizarre feeling, holding this explosive secret while he played the benevolent boss. Chloe and I spent hours talking on the phone, sketching out scenarios. "You can't go in alone, Alara," she insisted. "He'll eat you alive. You need backup. You need legal advice." She was right. I couldn't just march into HR and wave a receipt. I needed a strategy, a plan that Daniel couldn't wriggle out of. Chloe had a cousin, Ms. Jenkins, who was a corporate lawyer. She put me in touch. Ms. Jenkins was calm, sharp, and no nonsense. I laid out everything, showing her the expense reports, explaining the timeline, the fake business trip, the canceled birthday, the connection to my project budget. She listened carefully, nodding occasionally, making notes. "This is significant, Alara," Ms. Jenkins finally said. "Corporate fraud, embezzlement, and a clear attempt to obscure the source of funds by linking it to a project you lead. It's a serious matter." She explained the potential repercussions for Daniel and, more importantly, how I could protect myself. "We need to ensure the company understands you had no knowledge, that you were also deceived and used as a convenient cover." Her advice was simple: document everything. Keep detailed notes of all conversations, emails, and any evidence I found. And do not, under any circumstances, confront Daniel directly without the right people present. So, I did just that. For another week, I quietly built my case. I gathered emails from Daniel about the client emergency, messages where he promised the birthday celebration. I cross-referenced the fraudulent expenses with company policies, highlighting every violation. It was meticulous, nerve-wracking work. Every day, Daniel would walk past my desk, offering a superficial pleasantry, completely unaware that I was preparing his downfall. He genuinely thought he'd gotten away with it. That thought fueled me, kept me going. Finally, with Ms. Jenkins' guidance, I set up a meeting. Not with HR directly, but with Mr. Albright, a senior VP who oversaw our department, and a trusted member of the HR team, Ms. Cooper. I didn't mention Daniel by name, only that I had urgent information regarding financial irregularities related to the evergreen project that required immediate attention. The vagueness was deliberate. The meeting was set for a Friday afternoon. Daniel had actually been in a particularly jovial mood that week. He'd just closed a minor deal and was practically strutting around the office. He even made a point of stopping by my desk that morning. "Alara, just wanted to say, I'm heading out early today. Got a family thing," he said, a wide, self-satisfied grin on his face. "Have a great weekend. And don't worry, we'll sort out that belated birthday bash soon." He gave me a knowing look, as if we shared some secret, and then walked away, whistling. He smiled, thinking it was over. He had no idea his family thing was about to be much bigger than he imagined. I went into Mr. Albright's office, Ms. Cooper already there, looking serious. I took a deep breath. "Thank you for meeting with me," I began, my voice steady, though my hands were clammy. "This concerns Daniel Miller." Mr. Albright raised an eyebrow. "Daniel? What about him?" "I believe Daniel Miller has committed serious corporate fraud, using the Evergreen Project budget to fund a personal luxury vacation for his wife and falsely claiming it as a business expense." Their faces remained impassive, but I could see the subtle shift, the sudden stillness. I pulled out my carefully prepared binder. "I have documentation here showing a fraudulent $200,000 expense coded to project outreach and client relations, which directly correlates to a private jet, luxury resort, and other extravagant expenses for a trip to Turks and Caicos taken by Daniel and his wife, Brenda, during the exact time he claimed to be on a critical business trip. I laid out the detailed expense report, the booking confirmations under Brenda's name, the flight manifests, even a printout of a social media post from Brenda herself, showing off her surprise anniversary trip from that very week. It was all there. I explained how my birthday was canceled under false pretenses, how the expense was pushed through just before his departure, how it used my project as a cover. Ms. Cooper, the HR rep, picked up Brenda's social media post. Her eyes widened slightly. Mr. Albright, a veteran of the company, just looked at the stack of papers, his expression hardening with each document he reviewed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Daniel, beaming, poked his head in. "Everything all right, Mr. Albright?" "Just heading out." He glanced at me, then at the documents on the table. His smile, the one that had been so confident just an hour ago, faltered a little. He saw the printouts. He saw the detailed expense report. He saw his wife's name. His eyes landed on the single piece of paper I held up, slightly apart from the others, the summary receipt showing the $200,000 total. The one with his signature at the bottom. He froze. His face drained of all color, going from jovial to ashen in a split second. The confident smirk completely vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror. He knew. He finally knew. "Daniel, please come in," Mr. Albright said, his voice calm, but with an edge that could cut glass. "We were just discussing some discrepancies related to the Evergreen Project." Daniel stumbled into the room, his eyes darting between me, the documents, and Mr. Albright. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The air in the room was thick with tension, heavy with the weight of his unraveling deception. The investigation was swift. With the clear evidence, Daniel had nowhere to hide. He tried to deny it, to spin a story, but the receipts, the dates, Brenda's public posts, it all painted an undeniable picture. He was immediately suspended, and within a week, he was fired. The company filed charges, and he faced legal consequences for fraud. For me, the aftermath was a mix of relief and exhaustion. Mr. Albright and Ms. Cooper were incredibly supportive. They understood I was an unwitting participant in Daniel's scheme, and they commended me for my diligence and courage. My name was cleared, and the Evergreen Project moved forward, though with a new project head, one who was actually trustworthy. My career at Sterling Innovations didn't just survive, it actually flourished. I earned a promotion a few months later, not just for my project work but for my integrity. Chloe and I celebrated, properly this time, though it wasn't my birthday anymore. It was a celebration of justice, of truth, and of standing up for what's right. It wasn't the kind of revenge you see in movies, but it was real. It was seeing Daniel's face, his smile collapsing, realizing he was caught. It was enough. It was everything. It still gets me sometimes, thinking about how easily it all could have gone wrong, how close I was to being implicated, or at least having my reputation tarnished. But I stood my ground and I fought back, not for a lavish birthday, but for my dignity and for the truth. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself, for what's right, against someone who thought they were untouchable, you know the feeling, don't you? Let me know your story in the comments. It's hard, but it's always worth it.